Freemasonry, Foundation of Chaos Magic. Now, I was recently interviewed by author and founder of the Chaos Magic community and website Specula, Lua Valentia, and I also interviewed her. I'll drop links below. But in our conversations, Freemasonry came up, as of course did Chaos Magic. And I created a video about the sort of connections between the two many years ago, and it was largely theoretical, and so I've decided to make another video that's going to go deep into the history and the ideas, and we're going to look at specific, very secretive, in some cases, very secretive societies that you may be introduced to for the first time today, hopefully, or you might get a little more information on, or perhaps just a little more understanding of what was going on over the last few hundred years for me to be able to say that Freemasonry is the foundation of chaos magic. I'm Angel Miller. I'm the author of The 3 Stages of Initiatic Spirituality and the Path of the Warrior Mystic, consulting hypnotist and consultant on personal growth and related matters. And stay to the end, because although we're going to explore the history, we're also going to look at some very definite similarities between chaos magic and Freemasonry at the end, and what they have in common even today. Now, I mentioned in a previous video the diagram that you find at the beginning of Peter J. Carroll's Liber Null and Psychonaut, which depicts the prehistory of the Illuminates of Thanatos. I think we can really say the premier chaos magic society founded in the UK or anywhere. And, he depicts shamanism, Sufism, witchcraft, and various traditions as this kind of forerunners of chaos magic, which kind of merge and become chaos magic. Now, in the center of the diagram, we see Freemasonry, and kind of circling around that, we have Aleister Crowley, the Ordo Templi Orientis, and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, among other sort of interesting historical phenomenon. Now, why would that be, and how is this correct, and how did Freemasonry come to be included in this diagram that seems to be extraordinarily exotic and strange when many people think of Freemasonry as an old boys club? Well, I'm going to be showing a lot of images which will hopefully help us to understand that a little bit. But during the 18th century, when Freemasonry really emerged out of 4 stonemasons' lodges, taking the initiatic ritual and developing it. Now, after that occurred, it starts to spread through Europe. But in France and Germany, we get this explosion of Masonic rites and orders and organizations, all claiming to derive from some other source than Freemasonry in Great Britain. So we have, for example, the rite of strict observance, which claimed to be derived from the Knights Templar. We have another organization, the Asiatic Brethren, or African Brotherhood, and they translate Hebrew Kabbalistic texts and pass them on to their initiates, so they're much more Kabbalistically oriented, something that is reflected in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn later on, of course. And we have other such societies as the Golden Rosicrucians, or the Gold and Rosy Cross, where they are trying to conjure up spirits with the aid of a ghost-raising machine, and they claim to practice alchemy and have the elixir of life. Now, that is quite a heady mix, and of course there are other degrees, rituals, and so on that are created in this mix. And by the end of the 18th century, we get another order that is influential historically, and that is the Egyptian rite of Freemasonry, founded by Count Cagliostro, and that you may know was the inspiration behind Mozart's Magic Flute. But it also paves the way for another Masonic organization called the Rite of Misraim, which was founded in 1805, and then later on there was a breakaway called the Rite of Memphis, and then later still these two joined to become the Rite of Memphis and Misraim, and there are various versions of that. Usually the number of degrees go up to around 95, maybe a little more and maybe a little less, but they have roughly around 95 degrees, which, as you can imagine, would be very time consuming to take all of them. Now, in regular Freemasonry today, if you join a Masonic lodge and you go through the 3 degrees, you can take other degrees and enter other rites beyond that. The Royal Arch in England is considered to be the sort of capstone or the final stage of the 3rd degree, though that's a little bit of a political fudge why that was the conclusion. And beyond that, there is the Scottish Rite, which has 33 degrees, and the York Rite, which has, depending on what you count as in the York Rite, has either 10 degrees or 13 degrees, and the highest degree, the Order of the Temple or Knights Templar degree, is seen to be equivalent to the 33rd of the Scottish Rite. Now these are rites you can take, and there are others such as the Knight Masons, which has 3 degrees. You can take all of these different rites and degrees if you want, after you've gone through and become a Master Mason in a regular Masonic lodge today. And then there are others, such as the Rite of Memphis and Misraim, which are not recognized and you're not supposed to take, and is considered very bad and taboo and beyond the pale, and we mustn't have anything to do with it. And why should Memphis and Misraim be considered irregular, but the Scottish Rite is considered regular? Obviously, there's a lot of politics involved in this sort of thing. Masonic politics. I don't mean world politics, but they are not that different. And in fact, in one of the rites of Memphis and Misraim, the first 33 degrees are basically the degrees of the Scottish Rite. Now, with mention of Memphis and Misraim, we start to encroach upon the world of magic and the Ordo Templi Orientis and this kind of what's sometimes called fringe masonry a little bit more, which the Ordo Templi Orientis, or OTO, is sometimes considered to be a fringe Masonic group, although members and the leadership of the OTO wouldn't really like that term, of course. Now, if we move forward from 1805 towards the end of the 19th century, we find again, just as we had in the 18th century with the Golden Rosicrucians, the strict observance, the African Brotherhood, we find a kind of second wave of organization. So we have Memphis and Misraim, we have the Swedenborgian Rite of Freemasonry, a little bit further outside of regular Freemasonry. You have the Order of Zosimites, and of course you may have heard of this society, the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, or the Rosicrucian Society in England, formed sort of 3rd quarter of the 19th century. And if you read histories of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, it will almost certainly go back into that society, because the 3 founders of the Golden Dawn were all members of the Societas Rosicruciana. So what is that? Well, the Societas Rosicruciana was a Rosicrucian society founded and limited in membership to Freemasons. So it's still going today and exists in other countries. I was a member of the Societas Rosicruciana in Civitatibus Federatis for several years. That means the Rosicrucian Society in the United States. Its degree structure was taken from the Golden Rosicross or Golden Rosicrucians of the 18th century, and from the Societas Rosicruciana it was adopted by the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So that degree structure today comes through or via the Societas Rosicruciana and from the Golden Rosicrucians of the 18th century. Those two, of course, being Rosicrucian societies that only initiated Freemasons. Now, we tend to think of the Golden Dawn and the OTO as being really quite separate, especially historically. Now, one can immediately see a parallel in the fact that the OTO was founded by 2 Freemasons, Theodore Royce and Karl Kellner, and that it was originally founded as an Academia Masonica. But there are actual historical connections between them that need to be acknowledged. So another connection via Westcott was John Yarker, a figure not really known in the magical world, but probably should be. He was originally a regular Freemason and then left and formed, created all kinds of other sort of esoteric societies, or adopted them and developed them. One of those that he was given a charter for and founded in England and ran was the Rite of Memphis and Misraim, which he called the Ancient and Primitive Rite of Freemasonry. And Westcott suggested to Yarker that he give Royce a charter for Memphis and Misraim. And if we look at Royce's journal or magazine, Oriflamme, which was the journal that first announced the existence of the OTO and was, in a sense, the official organ of the OTO when it was first founded. If we look at early issues of Oriflamme, we find that it is claiming on the cover to be the organ of the Swedenborgian Rite of Freemasonry and of high-grade Freemasonry and of Memphis and Misraim, and all of these, sort of fringe Masonic rites, in a sense, form the foundation for the Ordo Templi Orientis, which originally sees itself as a Masonic rite or Masonic body. Now, of course, if you speak to OTO members today, they will point out that the Masonic elements have been stripped out of the OTO, and usually with a bit of a smile on their face, and they will tell you this is because they are much more magical and superior and so on. But the actual reason that Crowley stripped out the Masonic elements was not because he was against Freemasonry. He certainly was not. It was because he wanted to make it a higher rite for regular Freemasons, so that you would go through the Scottish Rite with its 33 degrees, and then you would take the rite of the OTO, so there would be sort of higher degrees above the Scottish Rite. And when Freemasons in America read the OTO degrees, they said you can't do this because it's all Masonic material that you find in the third degree of Freemasonry, and that makes you irregular, which means that we can't take these degrees, we can't join this society. So you have to remove that, and then we'll be able to join your society because it won't conflict, and we won't have to declare you irregular. Now, Crowley himself had already been initiated into what we would call irregular Freemasonry, and without getting too technical, that simply means that he joined a lodge or a rite of Freemasonry that is not considered to have a legitimate history, or not considered to be to have a valid connection to other regular societies. Now, whether that is fair or unfair, it doesn't really concern us. Certainly Crowley was very upset to discover that he couldn't participate in regular Freemasonry, particularly in England, but that is not really our concern. He joined the Scottish Rite in Mexico City around the turn of the 20th century, and then later on joined Anglo-Saxon Lodge in Paris, going through the degrees of craft Freemasonry. And in fact, we can find a photograph of Aleister Crowley in his Scottish Rite Masonic regalia, just as we can find a photograph of Roos in his Masonic regalia published in Oriflamme, which lists all of his Masonic credentials as well. And again, this seems to be quite a peculiar thing for the organ of the Ordo Templi Orientis, but hopefully by now we're getting the picture as to why that would be. Freemasonry, when it emerged during the 18th century and spread across Europe, and again particularly in France and Germany, we see this phenomenon where there are all of these competing Masonic rites suddenly, and they're all creating their own degrees, and they're all claiming to have some secrets that the other ones don't. Secrets of medieval knightly orders, secrets of alchemy, secrets of the Kabbalah, secrets of the Rosicrucians, secrets of the ancient Egyptians, and so on, of course. Now, this transforms the world of magic or the occult in a very significant ways. Now, of course, we might say that Freemasonry is influenced by these things, influenced by alchemy, Rosicrucianism, Hermeticism, whatever it may be, Kabbalah, and of course that is the case. But then the opposite happens. Freemasonry then influences this world, because prior to Freemasonry, how did you become a Rosicrucian, or how did you become a Kabbalist? What degrees did you go through? And in a sense, the Masonic ritual gives a structure to all of this occult phenomenon that is maybe dying out as with the Industrial Revolution a little later on, and with the progress of science and rationalism. It gives a structure to this. So, Agrippa wasn't any degree. John Dee wasn't any degree. But then after the 18th century, if you want to learn magic, you go through a series of degrees. Many of these societies have 3 degrees, or they have the same degrees as the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which goes back to the Golden Rosicrucians of the 18th century, of course. And so even in the IoT today, where there are 4 degrees, or maybe they've added things since I was a member 40 years ago, but even in the IoT, where you have these degrees, it's still an influence of Freemasonry. But there is something else that's significant that never gets talked about, and it's particularly significant in relation to chaos magic or the IoT, much more so, I think, than the Golden Dawn or the OTO or other similar societies, or Wicca or whatever it may be. And that is Gnosis, as it's called in the IoT or in chaos magic, or what we might call trance, or altered states of consciousness, or self-hypnosis, or whatever it may be. Now, if we look back to the 18th century, maybe even a little before that, we find that hypnosis is integral to the world of spirituality, the world of magic. So, for example, Pappus, the founder or co-founder of the Martinist order, like many other founders of esoteric and spiritual traditions, he was a practicing hypnotist. In fact, he was a medical hypnotist. And he says that all adepts in magic, as well as village witches or village sorcerers, practice mesmerism. Now, what is mesmerism? Today it's regarded as a form of hypnotism, and with a good reason, and that is that the founder, Franz Anton Mesmer, would throw people into a state of sleepwalking. Hypnotism means a condition of sleep, from hypnos, meaning sleep, and then osis, meaning condition. So hypnosis, a condition of sleep. So in that sense, it is a form of hypnotism, but it is also something in relation to modern hypnotism, or hypnotism today, is a little bit beyond that. Now, Mesmer was active in France, especially towards the end of the 18th century, and we get the word mesmerized from him. But he believed that there was a kind of fluid or energy around people, and that this energy could be manipulated, and he would manipulate this energy and throw people into a trance state and then heal them. So he became extremely popular as a healer. Now, in the English-speaking world, Mesmer has been largely forgotten, but in the German occult world, he's still remembered. So, for example, in Willy Schroeder's maybe slightly controversial book, A Rosicrucian Notebook, you can find Mesmer sort of throughout that book, and mesmerism throughout that book. So clearly the Germans up to the middle of the 20th century were still very influenced by Mesmer. Again, if you read Stephen Flowers' book on the Fraternitas Saturni, a rather dark but certainly very interesting occult order, founded at the beginning, or closer to the beginning of the 20th century. I think it was 19 26, if memory serves me correctly. In there, it talks about magnetic passes, and that's what Mesmer would say, that he was magnetizing people, or performing these magnetic passes to influence this fluid around, this invisible fluid around the patient or the individual, to throw them into a trance state. So it filters through all the way to magic in Germany, in this very secretive and serious, if slightly dark, society. And then there's an image of a drawing of a male magician who is drawing the ode, the energy, it's sometimes called ode, drawing the energy from this female magician to implant it in a sigil to create a what maybe it was a few decades ago called a servitor, a kind of spirit. So using this energy, manipulating the energy with this sort of magnetic pass to create this servitor. Now, whatever we may think of that, we're interested not in the morality or even in the practice so much, but in the history of how did it get here. So in a second, I'll talk about the origins of this sort of fusion of trance and ritual. But if you've made it this far and you're enjoying the video and are interested in more content like this, then please do like and subscribe. Okay, so the fusion of ritual and trance or magnetism. So we first find this in Masonic lodges in France during the 18th century. Now, Mesmer's theories were extraordinarily popular, and Mesmer himself seems to have had some overlap with Freemasonry, but the figure of importance here is a figure called Jean-Baptiste Willemotz, or Willemotz, and he is generally known for creating the Rose Croix degree of Freemasonry, or if he didn't create it, then of certainly being one of the very first people to promote it. Now, the Rose Croix degree today, you can take that if you go through the Scottish Rite. But in earlier times, a century or so ago, in fact, every single Masonic Rite had a version of the Rose Croix. So I mentioned earlier that you have the York Rite on the one side and the Scottish Rite. And the York Rite is, it seemed, the highest degree of the York Rite is regarded as being equivalent to the highest degree of the Scottish Rite. Now, you will not find the Rose Choir in there today, but if you go back far enough, you will find that the Knights Templar Masons, which are right at the top of the York Rite in America, did confer the Rose Choir degree. Pretty much every Masonic Rite had this degree, so it was incredibly popular, and of course we can maybe even detect its influence in the Golden Dawn as well. So Willemotz, although an obscure figure, is actually very influential in the world of Freemasonry, and maybe even a little bit beyond that into the Golden Dawn and maybe the OTO as well. Of course, Royce was also actively promoting the Scottish Rite at one point, and actually claims that Oriflamme is an organ for the Scottish Rite. So he's significant, but he introduced Mesmer's practice, or mesmerism, or magnetism, to lodges in Lyon. So that is where we first get this fusion of rituals and degrees and trance states that we see so prevalently in chaos magic or in the Illuminates of Thanateros later on. Now, what are the similarities between chaos magic and Freemasonry today? Now, of course, there are sort of technical similarities. Both have degrees. The IOT has a banishing ritual, as do most other magical societies, and Freemasonry has an opening and closing, which we could kind of say is a little bit like a banishing ritual. Your mind, your state of mind, is being transformed through this process. So we could compare the two, but I think more significantly than that, in chaos magic, there's no pressure to believe in one particular thing, and in fact, you probably shouldn't believe in one sort of thing. You're supposed to be sort of embracing different ideas, maybe. Whereas, for example, in Wicca, you would have to believe in the the god and the goddess, or in Druidry, maybe you have to believe in a certain deity. Maybe even in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, maybe it's a little more monotheistic, or of course they use Egyptian god forms as well. So there are sort of specific things, whereas in Chaos Magic and Freemasonry, you don't have to believe in a specific thing. And in regard to Freemasonry, it should be said that for a couple of hundred years, maybe a little less, it has been initiating Christians, yes, but also Muslims, Hindus, Zoroastrians, and today agnostics, deists, and people who are spiritual but not religious as well. So my cat has been enjoying this conversation, as you can tell. So if we go back a little bit in time, we can find that there are actually many significant figures joining Freemasonry from outside of the West. One of those is Swami Vivekananda, who promoted yoga and Hinduism to America, especially during the 19th century. And another would be Amir Abdul Qaeda, an Algerian resistance fighter who later spent time in France and later still in Syria. And both of them joined Masonic lodges, and as did many other sort of movers and shakers from the East. So there's no need to believe in a specific deity, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, spiritual but not religious, agnostic, etc. is all acceptable to Freemasonry. And with that, of course, another connection to chaos magic would be that it's up to you, it's up to your conscience what you believe. I would say that it shouldn't be fooling yourself. You should be really pursuing transforming yourself for the better. And with that, I think the last connection, or maybe, I don't know, is it the highest connection between the two, is action in the world. Whereas a lot of magical societies are concerned with angels and where this particular tarot card fits on the Kabbalistic tree of life, and this sort of thing. Freemasonry and chaos magic are much more about how can we act in the world. And chaos magic, of course, might want to transform the world through magic, but it should also want to transform oneself to act more effectively in the world. And with Freemasonry, that is most certainly the case, that one transforms the self over a long period to be more effective. So those are the connections that I see between chaos magic and Freemasonry today, though I'm sure not everybody likes that comparison. Well, thanks for sticking around. Do check out the website, chaostransform.com, and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks very much.